Hello everybody, welcome back to COVID Convos, where we have real conversations with real people about what well-being looks like in a pandemic. And today I've got my fabulous hosts with me, Simon and Griggsy. How you going, boys? Tell me something positive that's happened for you today.
Hey Kesh, hey Griggsy. Took myself off and got the flu shot today, which is always exciting, but feeling like you're sort of, there's that extra importance this year, so just waiting for the dead arm to kick in.
Yeah, good to see you guys. I have just woken up, so there's not a lot that's happened today, but generally in the last couple of days, we've been able to book our flight back to Australia, which has been a positive. So we're just hoping that that stays booked and that it doesn't get cancelled.
Oh man, that's a massive one. We've been following this saga with Griggsy and trying to get a flight back because all of the airlines and the chaos with the travel at the moment. So good to hear that, man. And I guess the second half of that is somebody told me something once that's always stuck with me, which is you woke up this morning. It's probably the most positive thing that could happen in your day.
It's a good start.
Yeah, so it's a really good start.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of good starts, we've got a good friend with us, Nina. She's in Taiwan. Nina, do you want to introduce yourself and tell viewers a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. Hello everyone, I'm Nina. I'm from Taiwan, and I actually, you can call me in Mandarin like Hsiang-Ju, but usually we Asian, we always have the short English name for our social network or even in a workplace because it's easier for memorizing. Yeah, so you can call me either Nina or Hsiang-Ju. I think Hsiang-Ju is hard for you guys, so just call me Nina, it's fine. And I meet these amazing people from the University of Melbourne, where I studied the MAP, the Master of Applied Positive Psychology. And so we built up a friendship right there. It's really an amazing course. And I had an amazing experience right there in Melbourne. And now after starting, I just back to my country. And now I'm in Taiwan. And I work for the cosmetic regulation. So I'm responsible for the cosmetic safety concern. And although it's not like positive psychology related, but yeah, that's what I studied for my bachelor degree. So yeah, so now I'm in Taiwan.
Amazing. And I would say that regulating cosmetics probably does do a lot of positives to the world, even if it's not directly talking about well-being. But I would like to hear more about how's COVID been affecting you. We've tried to get Nina on for like the last 3 weeks, so a lot's changed in that time. But I'd love to hear about what's been going on, not only for you, but in your country. And yeah.
Yeah, first, thank you for Cash to organize like this amazing meeting because, thank you for having me. And because the scene actually don't change much here, so I'm still like working. The country here didn't lock down, so things just like going normal. So everyone is still busy. But back to the impact from COVID-19. Actually, given the proximity, Taiwan is really close to China, so many predictions are not optimistic at first. Especially we have the first confirmed case who were confirmed have COVID-19 on January, so people were very panicked at that time, and right. And also we have many frequent exchange in many aspects with China. For example, many businessmen travel between Taiwan and China like every month or even every week. So when people know we have the first confirmed case here, everyone is so panicked. And but because we also have the experience from SARS, which is another new respiratory illness happened 10 years ago here. So people know how terrible these illness can be. So everyone just take it so seriously. So after that, after we know there's a confirmed case in Taiwan, our government asks people to wear the face mask, like no matter we go out. And people have to take their temperature check before enter any building, because we really scared to have the cluster infection. So luckily, it seems there's no outbreak in Taiwan, so we didn't lock down. But of course, the many indoor activity were canceled, and some public area like library or recreation center was closed as well. But apart from that, some company allow their employee to work from home, but others remain the same. Just people have to wear the face mask no matter where they go, even they are working. They still. So actually, we have the time. We have to wear the face mask like 10 hours a day. Yeah, but the thing's getting better now. So yeah, actually, thing doesn't change much here.
Nina, I'm interested, did you get an explanation from your government as to why they decided not to go into lockdown?
I think they start monitoring like the house situation going, because we didn't have the cluster infection. We know usually we have the case who was like traveling, so we don't have the community who get infected. So I think that's the reason why they didn't decide to lock down, because of course the economy is an important reason to consider. Yep, and they still want to things like get normal, so they keep monitoring like everything. So sometimes they still struggle about whether they should shut down, because lots of country you can see around the world they just shut down. But because we don't have the cluster infection, so that's why I think they made this decision.
And Nina, I'm interested in how that's obviously a different approach or a different experience to what we've had in Australia with lockdowns and everything, and other countries as well. And you know, the messages we've received in Australia is that places like Taiwan have a lot more experience in these sort of things, like you said, because of SARS, and so they were on the front foot more. I'm interested in how the general public coped with this or responded. In Australia, there was a bit of resistance. Well, I think that's probably an understatement early on. And then when the restrictions started coming in, there was questions and doubts and still some resistance. But I wonder whether that's because, you know, it's all new to us, and whether maybe in places like Taiwan where people were a bit more familiar with it, at least people who are over 10 years old, might have gotten on board and embraced it and understood it a bit more. Would that be true?
Yeah, I think that's really a good question. Like, apart from the experience I had mentioned before, I think because our health minister, they start to hold the brief press every day since January, because they know people were panicked, they heard some rumor, so they may not follow the order from government. So they make a brief press every day at the same time. So they make the information transparency, so people understand what's happening now. And sometimes they can explain more about the situation or how government is going to cope with these COVID-19. So I think it provides the social stability, which I think is quite important. Like, people always feel so panicked for something they don't know, they don't understand. So I think that's really important. I think our government really done a good job in terms of like make the information transparency, and also they provide many like strategy, like they try their best to ensure our people have enough face masks, and to wear, not worry about their daily like consuming goods or something else. So people feel more safe, which is more important. And when people feel safe, they believe our government, they will do their best to cooperate with government. And so I think apart from the experience, our people also like trust government and try to cooperate with government.
Again, that's probably a significant difference to Australia, I'd say. I think, well, interestingly though, I understand that trust in the government has actually increased since the COVID situation came about because of, I don't know, apparently some decisive leadership. But yeah, before that it was really low. So again, a big difference between our experience and yours by the sound of it.
Speaking of cultural differences, Nina, this is completely not related to COVID, but I'm always interested. You spoke in introducing yourself about the idea that you have a name that's in English and that's not actually your real name. And I'm always interested by this and feel a little bit uneasy about using somebody's name that's been anglicized, purely because it makes me feel like a bit culturally disrespectful. One, how do you feel about, having a name, having to make a name so that English people can pronounce a name? And the second part of this question is, do English speakers, when they go and speak Chinese, do they then make a Chinese name for themselves?
That's an interesting question. I don't feel any uncomfortable about having another English shorthand. I think it's quite normal in Asia because our name sometimes it's hard to write and also hard to pronounce. So a short English nickname actually help us to remember like our coworker. So I think it's easier in terms of writing or memorizing. So I don't feel any comfortable about that. But you are right. When the foreigner comes to our country, if they stay longer, sometimes they will create a Mandarin name for themselves. It's quite interesting. So sometimes we just use the pronouns, like the similar sounds, like to write. So I can create some Mandarin name for you guys as well, if you want.
I would love that. I'm really happy to hear that it swings both ways. That's a very Aussie way of saying it, but I was just concerned that it was a bit like, we couldn't possibly make a little bit of effort to learn a name. But then on the flip side, when we go to, if I went to China or Taiwan and then expect everyone to call me Justin, even though that name would be quite unusual for the people there. So you've I guess made me feel a little better about it all.
I'm really curious, if we keep on that theme of translation, Nina, is there anything, I guess, in Taiwanese culture or aspects of well-being or positivity that don't translate well to a Western culture?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the topic we have been talking about during the class, right? Sometimes we cannot find the exactly like translation in different language. And so, sometimes that's also bothering me as well, because it's hard for me to explain what am I studying in Australia, because they don't have the concept about like well-being. They associate well-being just like happiness. They didn't know what's the difference between like wellness, happiness, and health. So I think that's the topic. That's the concern around the world.
And then I guess what does translate and what doesn't, and is there stuff that's useful that Taiwan is doing that is helping their well-being right now that we could do? I'm guessing. There's a lot of questions in that. So I guess the very first one is, which are the parts that translate and which are the parts that don't?
You mean the well-being? I think it's more related to happiness. Like people think well-being is like more hedonic. It's like happiness and you live in a pleasure. But for me, I think well-being is more like peace. I don't think well-being is like the high pleasure or happiness. For me, I believe happiness is like more peaceful, more calm. So I think it also depends on how people concept about the well-being.
Is Taiwan interested in happiness?
Yeah, I think everyone wants to be happy. Yeah, but as you may know, in Asia, like mental health is not that popular. People regard it as like the disease, so we don't go to see the like psychology as much as like Western people. Yeah, so I think there's lots of problems on their table because people not willing to talk about like mental health, happiness or mental health here in Asia. So, right.
I was going to say, Nina, are there any words in your language that don't translate that are really important to, I guess, this area? So I'm thinking about, I guess, what comes to mind is Schadenfreude, which is, I guess, a form of emotion that's a German word, and it's like the pleasure that you get from somebody else's failure, which isn't necessarily a pos-psych concept. I'm not claiming it is, but I'm just interested if there's any words that you know of, and that just don't translate into English, and whether you could indeed try and translate them. It's a tough question.
Yeah, that's a hard question. But you know, I don't know if have you heard about Zen, which is more like Japanese Zen, Zen, Zen. I think it's also like more like, for me, it's more similar to well-being because you feel calm, you feel peace, and it's not only about pleasure, it's about like your inner peace, your inner beauty. So I don't know, how did you translate Zen in English? I have you any idea about that?
It's spreading over here, or Western Zen, I think. Maybe a Western sort of interpretation of Zen, but yeah, it's definitely gaining traction. And it reminds me of sort of those, I don't know if I got the terminology correct, but low arousal positive states versus high arousal positive states. And I think that for me is, again, speaks to that sort of generalized differentiation between Eastern and Western approaches to health or well-being. I think in the East, it's more of the low arousal positive states, so calmness and clarity and serenity and those sort of things, more of those sort of Zen concepts, where I think it's more typical in Western cultures, we're chasing that buzz, that high energy, euphoria and peak experiences, according to Abraham Maslow. We're chasing that stuff all the time. Rather than, I think contentment probably is another word that comes to mind when thinking about that, the more the Eastern approach. Does that sort of sit with you, Nina, do you think?
I think, I think it's really depend on like how people see the definition, because the same word can be different meaning for different people.
Because I'm like, even thinking what you said earlier, Nina, how it's been a struggle taking this knowledge back to Taiwan, because when they hear the word happiness, they think high arousal, hedonic emotion. And I think maybe we're having a problem right now in translation, right? This is the thing that's going on. I'm curious, I guess, is the lived experience of people in Taiwan. Like when they're thinking, maybe they don't actually have the word for happiness or well-being, or you know, at least in the concepts that we think about it. But in the terms of like taking care of themselves and living a good life, what is considered good? What is considered the right way to do that? Like, you know, what are they looking for? What is their goal?
I think it's almost the same around the world. Like the fan, they chasing for the fan, chasing for the money, finance. I think everywhere is like the same. Like everybody is looking for the higher level, like the fan, money, and social status, and have a good family. Yeah, I think it's more material things rather than like something really goes through inside.
Yeah, I think a lot of a lot of the stuff that I've been listening to has been pulling this apart as well, because I think there's this division that gets put in Western and Eastern philosophy, but it's more of a case of origination and tradition, and it's not necessarily a case of applying right now. There seems to be like a global philosophy that is transcending East and West, and it's one of materialism and status, power, and influence. And sometimes the way that we go about that looks a little bit different because of the philosophies that we're in. But underpinning that, I guess, is thinking about, well, how does that influence our well-being? So right now in Taiwan, this urge to keep everything going, keep the economy going, you know, even though you guys are really skilled at it and obviously got through that, I can imagine not really treating mental health as something that's important. I can imagine that there is some suffering going on in the Taiwanese community. Like, is there anybody experienced particular hardships through COVID? And how have you been maintaining your mental health?
I think for me, I love yoga. Like, because I think even we didn't lock down here, but more or less this pandemic, of course, impact people in some way. People feel pressure, people feel panic. So sometimes I just like doing some meditation or yoga to try to get my conscious just back to the moment now, not worry about the future, not worry about like the things tomorrow, just focus now. And I think COVID-19 is really it's a really a opportunity for people to reflect, like why we chasing a fan if we don't take care of body, our health. How can we chase the fan? How can we chase that social status? So I think it's really a good time for people to think about, like, to prioritize their things in their daily life, right? Because I think COVID-19, they cannot recognize if you are the president or not. So they just right, they attack everyone. Everyone is equal. Everyone is the same. So what's the point if you want to be the president, but COVID-19 still attack you? So sometimes it's really, I think it's really a good opportunity to let us to reflect, is that fan really important to us, or what do you think the most important thing for you for your life now? So I think even COVID-19 impact us greatly, but it also provide us to slow down our life path, to provide our chance to reflect ourselves as well.
Yeah.
Can I just say that differentiation that you were making, Simon, like that was profound. Sorry, I got the kids going in the background there, just chirping away. That was profound for me. That was like, I've never thought about it that way. So I'm interested to know, can you have them both? And I don't know what you guys think about that.
So high arousal and low arousal, Griggsy, you mean?
I mean, can you have like the social status and all those nice things that come with the, I guess, the more modern version of what we're talking about, and that inner zen? Because I think to say it's either one or the other is, they're both important. I think they're both. It's not because you're going to achieve zen that you're not going to potentially still crave social status. Can it be, rather than an either or question, can it be a both?
I think we'll leave it with the question.
It's big, isn't it? I brought it up right at the end of the episode just to make things interesting.
There's a strong part of me that really wants to answer it, but I'm going to leave it as a question. And I guess just open it up, Nina, if there's anything that we haven't had the chance to talk about today that you really want to say to the audience before we have to wrap up today.
I think you have said enough. But I also want to emphasize that like people should aware like our daily activity actually impact everyone around the world, and we have to focus. We have to know that like we share the resource of the earth, like the air we breathe, and so what we're doing in our normal daily activity actually really impact the people around you, even around the world. Yeah, I just want to say, I just want to emphasize like
such a good point to end on. My partner studies, she's gonna mess me up. She's a biochemist / microbiologist, so she's been paying very close attention to COVID. And she says something that I've been holding and very profound to me is we finally have an example that the individual actions of everybody in the world can actually change the scene. It can we have proof that it works. We can never say again that my actions don't matter. So thank you so much for bringing that up. To all of our viewers, thank you so much for listening. We hope that you liked our episode, and if you want to answer Griggsy's question, leave a comment. If you really enjoyed all the beautiful points that Nina brought up, like the video, and we hope that you subscribe for our continued content. But until then, you stay healthy, world.